He might not come back to this.
I thought you said Mac Miller. I'm pretty sure he's not coming back.
Oh, no, that's... Oh, that hurts a little.
Rest in peace, Mr. Miller. We love you. The show is a fan of you. Welcome to the Tragedy Academy, a show created to bridge societal divides in a judgment-free zone using candor and humor. My name is Jay, and we are joined today by Hogan Sherrow, Dr. Hogan Sherrow. He's a Fulbright scholar studying everything from grizzly bears to chimpanzees, and a Yale graduate. How you doing today, Dr. Sherrow, or Hogan, whatever you want to go by? I apologize I didn't clarify that piece up front.
Oh, Hogan's fine. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
I'm super excited about this. I reached out to you. Before we get started, I do want to check in with Gary. He has come back from Gulliver's Travels. I want to see what kind of stuff you did out there. What'd you have going on, Gary?
I had a bunch of stuff, filming boxing in Milwaukee, big rim racing in Mississippi, all kind of other things that I think some of the coolest stuff I've done in a while. And, I had to come back for this one. Super interesting story. And, we're going to probably have a billion questions for you, but thanks for coming on for sure.
Love it. Gary has the coolest day jobs, and they're not by way of somebody bringing them to him. They're him pursuing his dreams and constantly checking off blocks of things that he's been trying to obtain forever, dedicating it to the now versus somebody else's.
Give it a try.
Excellent.
Sometimes it works,
Fucking cool.
sometimes it doesn't.
So, Hogan, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you did a nice job with my academic background, so thanks. I grew up in Southern Oregon, as I like to say, like most Oregonians. I was born in California and then raised in Oregon. And grew up hunting, fishing, had a dad who was a hunting and fishing guide, mom who worked her tail off for the family. And they always taught me, kind of like you were talking about, Gary, about chasing after your dreams, that just go for it. It doesn't matter that the town you're coming from is 1,500 people total and your graduating class was 60 and they didn't even know what a primatologist was. You want to go study primates in the field? Go do it.
Hell yeah.
And so, yeah.
That sounds fun as shit, dude.
I did. It was, and it is. I did and loved it. In fact, I often say my happiest place on earth is not Disneyland, but is the forests of Africa. And then, like a lot of people, grew up a little bit, got a family, and became a dad. And now I find myself being a theater dad a lot of the time. And when I'm not doing that, I'm usually consulting, running political campaigns. I'm getting ready to do a conflict resolution training for an organization here. So lots of applying what I learned watching chimpanzees to human behavior.
That's very Prometheus Rising. Talking about looking at human evolution, the primal sector versus, the other areas of the brain that we've constructed on top of that. It's a weird soup, and it looks like you've looked at it from all different directions at the human experience as a whole, or I like to refer to it more so as a condition, the human condition, because I think that we come from a different kind of mindset than we believe we do. And I'm super excited to have you on here because of the fact that you explained that you're applying those primitive man and chimpanzee and bonobos and everything in between understandings and applying them to how we're interacting today and cramming that social conditioning on top of it. And I want to ask you, from your studies of primates, what do you find to be the most predominant trait that exists between the two that we would all be able to see easily?
Between humans and non-human primates?
Correct.
Okay. That's a good question because there are actually a lot of them. I came to the realization that the more I studied, and most of my work has been done on chimpanzees, the more I studied chimps, the more I saw reflections of us and them, just without headphones and fluorescent lights and baseball caps and things like that. Just without all the cultural trappings, which is a lot, which is, I don't want to minimize that. That's a big part of the human experience or the human
That's the
condition.
cage around the human experience, actually. That is the actual cage that you could be standing in, like a 1980s jungle gym on the playground, and be natural inside of what is all the lenses from the outside that are given to us from culture and society and all that, our parents and everything in between.
Sure. Yeah. I tend, when I used to teach classes, I used to portray it more like a layers, thinking of kind of like the onion metaphor, these layers that are kind of laid on top of it. And I like when you say human condition, because it kind of gives this inkling that it's like you're in a hospital and it just requires the right like to
It's a
cure the
little
human
bit of
condition.
mental illness in there.
Uh,
Well, I look at my condition is not more of a malady of the biological nature. I'm talking about that issue with the mind and perception of what we have going on around us, i.e. the masks that we wear and the personalities that we have that are given by those layers that you're saying, those multiple masks that we have that we carry in a sack that are tied by spider webs, each individual one, but we don't realize it. And we put it on every time we have an interaction with people, and we stuff it back in the bag. And as we get older, we get more and more of those fuckers.
I definitely don't disagree there. I think it's hard to narrow it down, but I would say that overall, what it taught me was we are apes. No matter how we want to slice it, when we break it down, we're apes. We're very special apes, as I often would tell my students and other colleagues when we were talking. There isn't a chimpanzee in the world that's sitting around contemplating the masks that it wears in chimpanzee culture. There isn't a chimpanzee in the world who's sitting around contemplating, why am I here? What's it all about? And so we are obviously very special apes. But as I often, my daughters have probably heard me say too many times, if you ever forget that you're an ape, just look at your ass in the mirror, because you don't have a tail, so you're not a monkey. You're an ape. Yeah, I think that's a great little take home lesson for folks when they start to get kind of, a little full of themselves. Just, hey man, you're an ape. And it's interesting because I even have colleagues within anthropology who argue with me about that. They want humans to be put in a distinct class, separate from the other apes. And when you break it down, I mean, we all know the kind of 98 to 99% genetically identical to chimpanzees and bonobos. But beyond that, immune complexes are basically the same.
Bonobos are funny, right?
Bonobos are really interesting. Yeah.
They solve. We had the zoologist, our zookeeper that came on, who predominantly worked with monkeys for a long time, and she was pointing out the difference between, this is a long time ago, but one of the things that stuck out to me was with the bonobos, they like to settle conflict or shit with sex. Like that was one of their methods.
Absolutely.
As a group. Instead of like all the other shit that people were going through, they would just run off and handle it and be right back to business again. Conflict solved.
Yeah. Outside of humans, bonobos use sex in a non-reproductive way more than any other primate. And there are a couple groups, like they're Miraki, they're a South American monkey that's similar, but not to the extent. Bonobos, it doesn't matter age, sex, social standing, what the situation. If there's tension, someone runs up and takes care of it. As I often would point out, though, yeah, I mean it's definitely worth the laugh.
Terry, you got anything you want to say at this moment?
Now, is a bonobo a chimpanzee?
They're a separate species. So we have two closest living relatives in the world. We have chimpanzees and bonobos. Bonobos are a species that evolved being separated from other chimpanzee populations by the Congo River in Africa. They couldn't cross the Congo. They were separated to the south, became an isolated population, and evolved into their own species.
Interesting.
Our separation from both is equal, and it's somewhere between 8 and 10 million years ago.
Shit.
Super fascinating.
But they are, they're. If you guys are ever at the San Diego Zoo and Wild Animal Park, they have bonobos in captivity. They don't have chimpanzees. And occasionally you'll see them putting on these X-rated displays for folks.
I brought this up for a reason. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that this ties into anthropology and the things that you work through and looking at the human condition again. We like to do things as humans in day-to-day society that hangs on cultural norms or societal norms, but don't realize that we're stifling primal needs and natures. So they create bizarre outcomes in our day-to-day lives, but we're never aware of them. And one of the reasons I brought this up was because the bonobos, being that it does have that method of solving conflict, it makes me wonder if it's missing on the other side of the river, so to speak, right? Are we, as a society, have we created some kind of bizarre construct to the mating or reproduction of ourselves where we have rituals like things like prom or, wearing certain clothes and doing all these things and I'm serious. Like, these don't exist elsewhere. But we've put all of these bizarre societal constructs around what you explained. If you're standing in the jungle, we're just monkeys without hats, right? That's the only difference, is we have all the societal shit. So I'm curious, is that something that we see shaping things and causing a rife just in sexuality as a whole?
Yeah, I don't know, because everywhere
it's a bizarre
you go,
question, I know.
Well, everywhere you go, though, human populations, no matter if they're European, American, Tasmanian, Zimbabwean, whatever they are, human populations have rituals and practices around sex that are pretty complex. There are human cultures that traditionally they practice the pairing of prepubescent males with older males. They believe that males cannot become fertile unless they ingest the semen of older males. That's a cultural practice.
Time out. Hold on. First of all, it's disgusting. Second of all, there is some weird shit that is only weird through the lenses of somebody from the outside. If you have the construct from the inside, it probably makes sense to somebody. Thank you.
But the point there is that there are tons of things that would never even pop up on our radar as rituals that seem like they would go with sex in any way. What we do know about human sexuality, I would say, is that we use it outside of reproduction more than any other animal that we know of. If you think about even pre-birth control times, males and females, if we're talking about heterosexual couples, males and females use sex as a bonding mechanism in their relationships for these long-term, what typically are more like serial monogamy. So the 7-year itch actually means something. They use that for bonding, and we know that is weird in the animal world. Most animals don't do that. Even bonobos, females will have sexual relationships and bond with each other. Males will to a little extent with one another, but not female male bonds. So that in itself is kind of I won't say unique, but a special case in humans. But all those cultural trappings around it, absolutely. I mean, I use that example of the culture that pairs up older males with younger males to show that extreme, that prom is nothing compared to the variation that we see out there with humans and the things we put around it. The other thing I would say is that humans everywhere, sex is private between partners far more than it is with others. So there have been anthropologists who have written about kind of humans acting ashamed or hiding the sex that happens. Mostly it happens at night. Mostly it happens when you're alone. Obviously, there are big variations there as well.
Yeah, masks can be involved. Yes.
Yeah. You can take a trip up to Portland and go to Ron Jeremy's sex club if you want. And there it's happening at night typically, but there are a lot of people.
Not that I wouldn't want to engage in anything there. I would go and watch or look at Ron Jeremy's circus or whatever you call it.
That's what you call it?
Man,
circus?
You should do a live show from there, Jay.
Yeah, we should. I'll get your ticket right now.
Oh.
you should do a live. You guys should do a live show. That would be awesome. And you just arrange a few interviews.
Man, it's a fascinating world. That whole entire thing, because I don't know if there's a right or wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's something. I mean, I taught. Part of my human evolution courses, I taught the evolution of human sexuality for years, and that's one of the hurdles you have to get past is kind of we have a moral compass. All humans do, but as that extreme example I showed you, even cultural practices can tend to overwhelm that moral compass, and it's a tough question because it really is, where do you draw that line? And I think for most of us, we kind of know, right? We're like, hey, let's not involve kids in this situation. Let's not involve, I think most of us kind of have a moral compass there. And again, if we're looking at averages across human populations, that tends to hold. So that example I gave was the very extreme. Most populations, sex is something that occurs typically between teens and older and up. So once kids get into their teenage years, they do what's called sex play. There's a lot of experimentation, figuring out where they fit, who they fit with, who they're attracted to, all of that. In non-Western populations, we obviously have put the clamps down on that, which is why I think you get prom and other things.
It's bizarre.
When you have kids who basically are being watched all the time and their behaviors being just suppressed all the time. And then you tell them, oh yeah, but on prom night, you can get wasted and naked and nobody cares. Guess what happens?
Or some shit.
It's pretty crazy how that works.
We're so strange, dear.
Yeah.
We have these release valves for our primal urges that we justify through other things, or, well, we deserve it because we've not done something primal for X amount of time.
Right, yeah, you could do it today because you haven't done it before.
It's like
and it's prom night. You got a corsage, so you can do whatever you want. You rented that tuxedo from. You went to the Men's Warehouse and got that bow tie. So tonight's the night, guy. It's really interesting when you think about it that way.
I'll give you another example. I think when you're talking about us suppressing a lot of primal things, I've done a lot of writing and speaking on the kind of core of being male, because one of the things that I focused on in my dissertation was the development of male behavior, looking at how these chimpanzee males, they grow up with mom until they hit puberty, and then they intentionally attach themselves to older males and start hanging out with them and trying to get incorporated into that group, because
The
chimpanzee
Chimp Big Brother
society is built
program.
on male relationships. Absolutely. It really is. And they will model their behavior. They literally have behavior role models. And I've looked at that in humans as well. And one of the really interesting components there are cultures like the Maasai, where the Maasai, you go through this period from about age 15, 16 to about 25, 26. So about a 10-year period where you're not expected as a young male to have any real responsibilities as far as decision making. Like they know that your brain isn't all there and that you're just raging hormones. So they send these young males out, and they live in these little warrior groups where they basically go and raid cattle from neighbors. They protect livestock. They're all Maasai consider all cattle in the world to belong to them. So they protect their cattle from lions, etc. And they basically earn their stripes as a guy, as a male in their society. They're just an example of, there are lots of cultures where there is this period where the culture recognizes, yeah, don't ask him to make a rational decision.
Right?
Yeah, it's like,
Well, during that same period, what do? We ask him to sign up for the military.
I was
We
going to
ask
say
him
that.
to go to college and sit in class for 4 hours a day.
Bro, you're
And-
so right. And here's something I want to point out. Compound that with making major political decisions or anything like that hungry. We're the only creature out there that will forego fucking food in order to play our make-believe for a while and make decisions in it that change people's lives forever. The only thing I fucking ask is I never get a hungry judge.
Yeah, you don't want one that's looking for lunchtime.
Yeah, you should Postmate something on the way into court.
Bro, I'll
Find out what
show
they
up
like.
with a pizza.
Yeah. I mean, it's very similar. Some people join gangs, some people join the band, some people go into the military. It's like a lot of people at that time end up, joining a certain group or going, and that's like heavily influential part of their life. Like if you go left or right, and whoever the older, usually it's probably the same gender, the older men, or women, depending on what you are, whatever they're doing or path they're on is usually what you're going to follow, at least for a while. So in some ways it's the same, I think, for sure.
Gary, that's what actually got me interested in studying the development of chimp behavior, is just from my own experience thinking about when I got into high school. I joined the football team, and then the basketball team, and then the baseball team. And I had this older group of guys who, of course, I thought of as men, right? They were 17-year-old punks. I thought of them as men because I was a 14-year-old punk. And
man, that sparse goatee and mustache will throw you off every time. You thought it was manhood.
Man, the
Looking
little
at it.
wisps, yeah, the little wisps will get you. But I had a best friend when I entered high school. We went two totally different paths. He decided that he was gonna hang out with all the stoner heavy metal kids across the street. They went across the street and smoked all day long, skipped class. He barely made it through high school. And I always thought about, wow, totally that two paths diverge in the road, and which one did I take? And so when I started looking into dissertation research, I saw that chimps had this same kind of male bonding situation, and I went, that may be an interesting dissertation to do. So yeah, I was fortunate that my thesis advisor had a great field site for that, a site called Ngogo in Western Uganda. It's actually being featured on a Netflix series coming up called Chimp Empire. That's gonna drop here in another couple weeks.
Hold on, who gets the high five for that fucking name? Like, who is the one
It's
that
not me.
named that son of a bitch, dude? I want to do the art for this thing. There are so many ways you can go with Chimp Empire.
my guess is it's the production company that did it, that named it. They're usually the ones who come up with that. But that site has the largest chimpanzee community ever recorded. There are over 200 individuals. There are over 35 adult males at any given time. To give you some comparison, Jane Goodall's her site, which is the most famous site, about 60 to 70 individuals and about 9 adult males. So, just a huge amount of chimps. That's why it's called Chimp Empire, because they continue to expand their territory. And the political maneuvering is amazing in it. But I was fortunate enough to be able to study there. My thesis advisor from Yale, David Watts, is one of the directors of the site. He and John Matani, who's from University of Michigan. I was, lucky that they accepted me to go and study there. And yeah, you can't get away from, like I said, the more I studied them, the more I went, okay, so now these huge males are going and playing with these little guys where they're like wrestling with them and chasing them around a tree. What? That doesn't do anything for them in their political maneuvering. They're not getting laid. They're not making babies. They're not eating, as you pointed out, Jay. All the things that they should be doing, they're playing, and they're 30-year-old males that are chasing a little 12-year-old around a tree for 20 minutes, and then they go off and do something else.
We could take a note from that. We really should.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have no business doing half the shit we do, and we should be playing with kids and acting like kids.
Well, I think that when we look at humans, we look at something like pickleball, right? Pickleball's taken off across the country. Everybody loves to play it. What the hell does pickleball do for you in your everyday, except relieve stress, get you in better cardio shape, increase your mobility, all those little things that we don't think of as, yeah, but I'm not getting a raise out of this. I'm not getting a date. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Pickleball adds to, I'm just using that as an example, but that playing, finding time to play, the whole, one of my favorite sayings that again, my daughters have heard me say too many times is cliches are cliches for a reason, right? It's because they tend to be true.
Yeah, for sure.
Stereotypes can be in that bucket too.
Yeah, but when we talk about, being young at heart, there's a reason that's a cliche. It's because it really does help. And again, another lesson from the forest that chimps teach you. It's okay when you're walking down a trail just to do somersaults over and over 30 times in a row for no frickin' reason.
I'm a chimp. You just told me this. This is what I do. I run around my house. My wife is constantly embarrassed of the stupid shit I do. But I feel like at a certain point in life, I came to the realization that we're repressing just normal urges to be normal creatures. And we're so intertwined with each other that anything that we're repressing impulsively, it's likely something that was needed elsewhere. So I use the Target high five, right? I think that if I'm walking through Target, and everybody gets weird urges to do shit, right? You wouldn't high five a stranger. Why? Because it's something people be like, are you fucking nuts? Why is this guy high fiving people? But I would bet dollars to fucking donuts that if you felt the instant urge to high five a person walking past you, they probably needed it. And it was going to give them something they needed. It would more than likely, just intuitively, you could change the entire scenario that's running in their head. It's a mental illness. It's fiction. It's putting a stick in the spoke of the tires. He gets to choose which one he spins again, but you stuck it in there and you can give him a moment of discernment in his scenario. It's just how things come together. I believe in acting like a kid, dancing, goofing around, using cartoon voices for the dog. Fuck it. I don't care. Who the fuck's going to judge me? Right? It's a lot more fun than sitting around fucking, well, Gary does judge me. He judges me every time, but we discuss this. He uses a scorecard and holds it up.
Well, it's interesting you say that because people who know me know that I have a general policy that I go by. I have lots of policies in my life and lots of positions on things, but one of them is if you see me on the street and you need a hug for whatever reason, come and get a Hogan hug. I call it get a
Fucking
Hogan
love that.
hug. I've been told that I give really good hugs, and not just by people who rely on me.
It's the beard. Beard gives
The
you
beard.
hugging powers. I'm telling you.
But yeah, I mean, I do it, and I've had people who I haven't seen in years who walk up and they're like, "Hey man," I go, "How you doing? It's been a rough week," and I go, come on in," and just give them a hug, and it's amazing, man, woman, doesn't matter how many people, like you said, there's this little sigh.
Yep.
And almost every time I hear, "Man, I needed that."
Yep.
And I go, "Yeah, no problem."
Yep. It's that easy sometimes.
Similarly, I just did this trip to Disneyland for spring break with my daughter. She's a junior in high school, my younger daughter. And this is my last spring break I get with her before she graduates. And so we went with another family, and every parent is just, I mean, if you guys have been to any amusement park, let alone Disneyland, every parent is practically at the end of their rope, right? And of course, all the dads are in like team t-shirts that they didn't pick out. They didn't, they didn't pick out the Disney or Bus t-shirt, including me. And so I started, like, we were there for 2 days. I started just going around, and when I'd see a dad who looked like he was like, "Wow, okay," like there's beer in the fridge back at the Airbnb. I just walk up, give him a little slap on the shoulder, and say, "Hey, Dad, you've almost made it through, and you got the kids here. That's the important thing." And very similar to the high five, how many guys would look at me with this huge grin, and I'd be like, "Next time we're getting team t-shirts just for the dads," or something like that.
Yep.
And that human connection, I think, is something that we get really caught up in our everyday lives. And like you're saying, all these trappings, and we forget about these kind of basic, just, a slap on the shoulder for somebody as you're walking by and telling them, "Hey, you're doing a good job. You're good." It's amazing how far that goes.
Especially with, since post-COVID and people just aren't out as much. People don't go to the office as much. I think human interaction's way down, than it was 4 or 5 years ago. Have you seen much of a difference in behavior since then?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have family who's immune compromised. So during COVID, I was living like a Shaolin monk. I mean, I was, I was shopping for them and not interacting with a lot of people. And I'm naturally an extrovert, so it was really tough for me as far as just keeping my own, what there is of my sanity left. But I've it's amazing to me how much I think people now really appreciate that connection, and when it happens spontaneously, because they went for several years without, with like 6 feet away, maybe a fist bump at best. And, it's amazing to me how many people, I still, like you guys, being polite about, pronouns and names at the beginning of the show. I still will ask before I give that hug to folks, "Are you good with a hug?" But most people, yeah. And they really appreciate that contact. And I think that was probably one of the most difficult things of the whole thing. I think that's why you had some of the reaction that you had. I think people were freaked out in their subconscious about losing that human connection and didn't even realize it.
Well, their entire social construct is being redefined right in front of their eyes. They're seeing the fallacies in the cycle of that tire that I was talking about, that you can stick in the spokes. And when they've been running the same cycle over and over and over again, every time the sun comes up and goes down, they don't have time to be mindful and look around at the cycles of nature and the cycles of themselves and what people are acting, what people aren't acting. And you either did one of two things when you went into that hibernation phase or that social isolation. You either worked on yourself or it cracked you. One of the two things. You became either more self-aware and started to see what was a choice in how you feel versus what is actually going on around you. What is a anxiety that is rooted in something that doesn't exist yet, or something that's already happened. And when you sit in place, you start to understand that, well, if I never leave here, that doesn't exist ever again. Is that actually what's happening to me? I feel like it helped a lot of people. For me personally, I sat down and meditated. That's all I did. For I think I'm 3 years in now, almost going on 4, and I haven't missed a day of meditation. It was the only way I could survive it, because much like yourself, I'm a bizarre introvert with extroverted tendencies. I will, in moments like you're explaining, if I go to the grocery store, I will tell the person that's in the line that looks like their mom just died, that everything's all right. Or I will give somebody a hug in any place. I don't give a shit, right? And I agree with you that those connections are super important. And I love that you pointed out that now they seem to be more appreciated. And sometimes I feel like we need that stick in the spokes of the tire to show us what gratitude is. We have to miss something in order to be grateful for it. Sad, but the rule should be remain grateful for it when you get it back.
That would be nice. But I think this is where humans are more like goldfish than chimpanzees. We seem to not have very good memories for those things.
No, they don't. And I would like to point out, as a Fulbright scholarship, what is it? It's an award that you receive. I think there's so many Nobel laureates that have it. There's like this is an elite group of people that get this funding for their research or whatever it is. And I can't help but think, after looking through all of your credentials, that do we all look like we have thumbs for toes to you? Because you're a fucking intelligent dude. You worked with everybody. I feel like your studies didn't need to be in Africa. They could have been on Fifth Avenue and Pine Street. Because, dude, you're an exceptionally smart man, and you're studying the people around you. And I can't help but think that we look like we've got rocks doing everything we do.
Is it hard to turn it off? Like, are you constantly thinking about that when you see people interacting, or, is it, can you just, go to the grocery store with your kids and hang out, or do you see like behaviors and you're constantly thinking about, or does it go into some part of the brain that, for a later study, or like, oh, that, that's just like X, Y, and Z, or are you able to just like ignore? I can't mind my own business. It's been like a problem my whole life. So I'm always paying way too much attention to what other people are doing.
That's why he's a producer in television.
My mom should tell me to mind my own business since I was 3 years old. So like, I can only imagine you studying people.
No, Gary, that's a great question. It never turns off. And actually, I've been told by multiple family members that, at some point my brain needs to turn off just in general, because, when I was studying for my comprehensive exams for my dissertation, I recorded reading articles and listened to them in my sleep. I wrote part of my dissertation while I was sleeping at night. I would wake up in the morning and go, "Oh, I've got that summary for that chapter figured out," and type it out. But when I'm in a social situation, no, it never turns off. Like I just talked about going to Disneyland.
Oh yeah, Disneyland.
Oh, dude, Disneyland will really do it. I live next to Disney World, and my in-laws have worked there for 20 some odd years. They retired from there, and every time I go there, it is a people watching experience like I've never seen.
Well, the most exhausting situations I ever have are when I'm in a place that's really crowded. So Disneyland just wipes me out. If I'm on the streets of New York, oh, I'm done. I can
Eh,
I can hike all day long in the forest, in crazy elevation change, everything else. I get on the streets of New York after 6 hours, my brain is way overloaded. And it's because I realized this finally that it never shuts off. And I'm constantly, like you're saying, Gary, I'm constantly, every person that I see, I am basically figuring out what's going on with them. And I'm figuring out where they're at in their lives, what's going on, and then I'm tying it to some sort of evolutionary component of, well, yeah, of course they're postmenopausal, so what they're worried about is X. Of course they're a 28-year-old guy, so what they're worried about is Y.
You don't tell them this, do you? Like, that could be a problem. I could see why they would say to turn off your brain is if you were talking to Martha at
occasionally,
Piggly Wiggly and you
Like,
said, look, you're
That's why you're trying to get off the airplane.
It's not rational that you're aggravated about your check right now.
Yeah.
You might just be having hot flashes.
Yeah.
I love this guy. I love this character. Like, it may not be you, but I love the guy that has just the greatest intentions in the world with discernment, but has no social awareness.
Yeah, that's a hell of
I
a
will
character.
occasionally tell my friends.
Oh, my friends get it. I don't give a fuck.
I will occasionally tell friends. And actually, I do some coaching for individuals, and it's the perspective I use when I coach. So for example, I had a client, early 20s nurse, and he and I were talking about his goals, and I was explaining to him that he's at the age where he's starting to establish himself, and I said, and this is exactly what males everywhere do, human males everywhere do, is they start establishing themselves, they start figuring out their future. Because he was like, man, I was thinking, I was out with some friends, and I thought I shouldn't spend this money because I'm investing in this little plot of land with my brother and blah blah. And I was like, yeah, that's what you do at this age. Rather than fight that, understand it and use it to your advantage.
It's the high five.
And so getting back to your earlier point, Jay, of these kind of primal drivers that we have, and recognizing them and incorporating them in and understanding how to use them to your advantage.
I think that's an amazing way to look at it, because all of us have that primal mind. That's why I brought up earlier that Prometheus Rising thing, and I might be picking the wrong particular book. I believe it's this one, but where it shows the evolution of humanity and the mind. And I believe that societal conditioning and also the evolution of man creates languages that are different than the ones that we speak with our mouths. And I think that we cannot communicate in certain scenarios because of this fact, i.e., location or societal or socioeconomic divide or racial divide or whatever they are, that no two groups will have the same lenses to view things through. They will all have different views. And I think what we need to do is kind of find a ground where, like you're saying, that we reappreciate contact and start to see that rather than judging or figuring out what empathy, should look like, we just allow it to happen and believe people when they tell us what they see. Simple as that. Someone like yourself has the gift of discernment at whatever point, right? Because that's what we're discussing. We're talking mindfulness and discernment is what we're discussing. And I think that wields a very, very heavy burden and sword at the same time, because the human ego is fragile. The reality that people walk around with is really an eggshell that they don't realize that it is. In fact, it's actually just dust. You blow it away. And for that reason, I'm curious, do you feel an onus to help society move forward in a manner where they can utilize this understanding, or you can utilize this understanding for good, and to give people the opportunity to help others? And if so, how?
Wow. Geez, man, put me on the spot. Yeah, I honestly I do. When you talked about during the pandemic, what did people do? I decided one of the ways that I could kind of help figure things out a little bit is, well, first, my younger daughter got sick with COVID. We didn't know it at the time. It was early on in the
Oh
pandemic.
no.
She got diagnosed with an unrecognizable pneumonia. Um and got she didn't have to
Yeah.
be hospitalized, but she got pretty sick. And it was kind of scary there for a little bit. And so I went back into dissertation student mode and became um pretty well versed in the SARS-CoV virus and what we knew about it at the time, and basically took that on and was like, this is one way I can help, is I can help to kind of help spread actual scientific data through my different networks. Um, yeah. Another way that I did during the pandemic was I was like, okay, I got a lot of downtime, don't have a lot of consulting gigs going on. So I'm going to read the Federalist Papers and become basically an expert on the Constitution because, hey, why the hell not?
Just as relevant as anything else. Why not do it? At least it serves a purpose.
Yep, might as well figure that part out. So I did, and gave me more appreciation for both Madison and Hamilton. Jay was a bit of a slacker in that. No offense to the name
It
Jay.
continues.
Bro, it's
Um,
definite slacker right here. Yeah, I keep that legacy rolling strong.
but but then I write some popularized articles. Back when I was a professor, I wrote a thing for Scientific American on bullying and actually getting at the evolutionary roots of bullying and why
Man,
kids bully instead of the kind of social trapping putting on top of it and saying, if we just give them all hugs, they'll all be okay. We have to figure out that bullying actually is a very effective strategy for the kids who get away with it.
to learned
And so we have
behavior.
to, make sure that they don't get away with it. Most recently, I wrote an article on gender, sex, and sexuality for an online magazine called Open Mind Mag, um, that takes top relevant topics of the day and puts a scientific focus on it. What does the science actually say? And so, being an evolutionary anthropologist, it gives me that anthropology background to deal with the gender component, but the biological background to deal with the sex component. And so wrote an article that got received pretty well, I think. But the main point to it is that gender and non-binary, multiple genders, etc. It's a human thing. It's what humans do. Um, and it is uh, a social contract and understanding between individuals and their community. So it's how the community sees you based on how you present yourself and how you're accepted. Um, gender is sometimes based on biological sex, but not always. And so again, if we start understanding that's where that comes from. It's not like it just dropped out of the sky, and it's also not like people who are saying I am transgender are saying, and therefore biological sexes aren't real, or they shouldn't be saying that, because biological sexes are very, very real. They're a factual element. And in mammals, sex is set at fertilization chromosomally. So you don't have like a reptile situation where, depending on the temperature of the eggs, you're going to get males or females. It doesn't happen that way in mammals. Um, we have to recognize those facts to be able to deal with the actual reality that we have going around. Um, and so yeah, so I do that. Quite honestly, it's part of the reason why I do the political work I do, is because
I
I
thought
want
so.
people to, I want people, yeah, I want people to have clear minds, and I want people to have, and I know that's a big stretch these days, but I want them to go into the voting booth, or like here in Oregon where we vote by mail. When they fill out their ballots, I want them to have the clearest understanding of their choices that they do. And I think all of those are things that we can use as tools to help improve the human condition. So
I think that's a beautiful
try and do my
answer.
part.
Right. And I love that you were hitting on very relevant topics. The Tragedy Academy is very pro LGBTQIA, plus, and every other acronym letter or whatever you want to put on it. It doesn't matter. You get a seat at our table. And I like the way that you have chosen a role of clarification of fact and allowing people to see and make their own decisions. I don't hear you influencing anybody on what they should like or not like. I hear you basically translating the information into something that they can take in or ingest on their own and make whatever conclusion they want to from that, but they're not getting somebody else's societal input or some bizarre cultural extra piece or anything like that. The way that you described that is just cut and dry. And I would agree with you 110%. And especially when you say it happens, it's already happened and happening. So to say that it doesn't exist or shouldn't exist is just ridiculous, because just by way of it being in the now, it exists. Like, it's so bizarre that anybody would even argue it otherwise. Like, to look at something that is in your face and say it's not in your face is super weird. I don't understand it, but that's a lenses and translation thing, the languages. We all have languages that we understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think, I mean, when it comes to the gender sex situation, I've watched my colleagues, in my opinion, make this an even more difficult conversation, because there's the whole kind of purity test that goes on both sides of the aisle. At the extreme sides where, I have friends who say, "Oh, we just need to make sure that everyone has a living wage and everyone has this and everyone has everything they need." And I say, "So, you want a socialist utopia?"
Yeah,
Sounds awesome.
That's the hard part.
But do you have a plan to get us there?
Ask ChatGPT. That'll give us the answer, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. Maybe that's part of Bing's AI plan when they want to become more than a machine. They've got a plan to get us to a socialist utopia.
They got to change their name, man. I can't take Bing seriously.
Neither can I. My point there to him is, if you don't have a plan to get us there, then we have to deal with the system that we have.
Yeah.
Right? So stop with the purity test and figure out what fits best with your philosophy.
Yeah, I debate this about guns all the time.
Exactly. I think we run into the same thing when you're talking about, especially the trans situation. I think the trans situation is a little bit different than the rest of the LGBTQ community's situation. I think that T, and I've heard a few queer advocates say that they want the T taken out because it's become a slightly different scenario. Because you've got this mix of, someone who is biologically male or female, who hasn't transitioned, who's claiming that they are this and therefore they should be treated like this in society. Yet, we hear the situations of like the college athletes and that sort of situation that just muddies the waters. Is all I'm saying, is that there are folks who are saying it's not as clear as we should have the same rights as you guys. We should be able to marry. We should be able to.
Why is
have
that
a family.
an issue?
We should.
That's
have
the part I don't understand. Like, why do we even fucking care? Like, have a family, have a party, do whatever the fuck you want. I'm cool with it. Just don't sacrifice kids or some shit. Like I don't bomb
Jesus.
Don't bomb daycares or anything like that, and I'm good. But Gary actually has had a really more recent working relationship and friendship with the trans community, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this because he's done a lot of work over the last couple of years in this.
I mean, it was something I was not very familiar with until, I made friends and colleagues and coworkers. And, it's like anything else. Like how you're saying, like it's in your face, it exists. Like, how can you say it's not? Like, every one of the people that I know that's trans feels the same way and knows that, they are what they are. But there's people that have never met a trans person or never will that are like, that's not real. That's a dude or that's a chick or whatever. Like, man, that's science, And it's like, okay, you
Science
went to
will
eighth
fool
grade
you.
and podunk somewhere, and that's when your science stopped, And I think, personally, I think the extremes are crazy on both sides because most of the trans people I know, they don't think that, like someone biologically born male should be able to like do a combat sport against a biologically born female, and some of the extreme things, it's like,
Yeah.
they're like, they should, not be able to do that. But there's like Karens that are like championing like a lot of different causes that kind of take them over. And most of the trans people don't even feel like what that is, or gay people or Black Lives Matter or
I
whatever.
love the advocate for the advocate.
Yeah, and that happens a lot. And I think like at the end of the day, like everyone wants the same shit. They really do. Like they want to be able to be happy and feed themselves and their family.
Yeah, Gary, that's exactly my point with the purity test component, is that you get the extreme perspectives that put this purity test. Do you believe every single thing that I
It's
do?
crazy.
And if you don't, you're against me. And we all know anyone who has lived longer than 24 years, who has any reflective ability at all, knows that you're never going to find a group of people who all believe the same thing. There always going to be some variation in there. But I think that in this particular case, what's happened is, and I have professional colleagues who study sex, biological sex. So forget the gender component, just sex. Who they find that 0.0014% are of humans are born intersex. And they make a gigantic deal out of that small tiny component of the population. My point is, again, let's look at humans like they're biological creatures. If you were to look at elephants and find that same number in elephants, you wouldn't pay any attention to the elephant that is born intersex or with no clear indication as a population. I'm not saying we shouldn't pay attention to those humans as individuals. It's their individual journey, and we need to recognize that, and we need to support that. But we also shouldn't pretend that those data don't exist, that the overwhelming majority of humans that are born biologically male or biologically female, and that they are, the majority of them are fertile. They're going to develop in a normal human trajectory. And so for me, there's two different discussions that are going on that are being conflated.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I look at it as, I've never had a situation where being around anyone from any of those letters in that group has hampered, threatened, made my life more difficult. I think maybe the only time I ever had where it was even an inconvenience in my life was after bears started becoming a very real thing in the gay male community, and I had a couple of guys approach me and hit on me, and all I said was, "Not my thing, man. Sorry." And they said, "Oh, cool."
Just like if it was a man and a woman.
Boy, that was so stressful. I think I need a safe space now. I'm so stressed out from that. Like that's
You
that's just
really
ridiculous.
do, man. I'm sorry.
I mean,
It's
where I live,
ridiculous.
in Ashland, I think Ashland, Oregon, one of the issues that we have here, I think, is that there's a lot of social signaling if you're affiliated with folks in that who identify in that community. So for parents who have kids who say that they don't feel like they're a boy or they don't feel like they're a girl, parents get social status in their little circles by supporting those kids, and they should support them, right? You're their parent. You should support them in everything they do, like you said, as long as they're not hurting people or themselves.
Bingo.
Like for me, you don't. I don't give people kudos for doing what they should do. Right? If you're a parent, love your kid, damn it, and oh wow, you love your gay child. What a stretch for you. You're a hero. Like no, that's what you're supposed to.
That's
do.
like bragging you pay child support.
I think it's even worse than that. That's like bragging that you breathe. I mean, for me, I just can't imagine a scenario where I don't love and support my kids. But there is, and I think socially, this is why I wrote the article. I think we need to sort that out. We need to stop trying to pigeonhole kids as they are this. We're going to identify them as this. We need to let them just be kids and develop. Because what we see historically in human cultures is, when I said about kids doing sex play and figuring out where they fit in, that is, they're not expected to take on the gender responsibilities that they may develop into until they figure that out. So if along the way they figure out that they're non-binary, what we would call non-binary, which they may call two spirits or something like that, that's fine. We got a place for that. That's where I want us to get to as a society, where we allow people during their developmental phase to figure it out and not try to pigeonhole them or place them into, oh no, you have to identify as male or female. You have to identify as this or that. I've watched sixth graders call themselves pansexual. I'm like, so first off, there's nothing sexual about you. You're a sixth grader.
Hold on. If I were in sixth grade, yeah, exactly. The only way I'm saying I'm pansexual is if I have an actual pan in my head and I'm hitting my crotch with it at sixth grade.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't know what the
or
fuck
at
I was
45.
talking about. Like that would be what I would be doing. Oh, I got pansexual. I don't fucking know. I'm in sixth grade.
I would
still
say
see you doing that.
Most of them are now. Most of them are hand sexual, if anything. And I've talked to parents who have told me they've asked me for advice with their kid and stuff, and they'll say, well, they think that they're pansexual, and I'm like, first off, please just stop using that term, because they're not sexual. So they may be attracted to both male and female types. Fine. Lots of kids are. Let them just be attracted and just be a kid and figure it out. And that's where I think we really need to pump the brakes on a lot of things. I think for the most part, we have no idea when we're doing gender affirming surgeries on kids that are under 18, when we're doing hormone replacements. We have no idea what the long-term ramifications are, because those are relatively new treatments. We don't have the data. And I'm all about the data. So if we don't have it, let's not get ahead of ourselves. And that's where, like Gary, where you're saying, that that the folks that you've worked with, almost all of them, they know who they are. They're cool with it. They're not trying to push an extreme agenda. Absolutely. Same as the folks that I've hung out with, that my daughters are part of the LGBTQ community. I mean, I have lots of I would say acquaintances, and some good friends. But I don't want to overstate. Oh, I've got tons of friends I've got lots of folks that I know in the area, in the community, and that's the thing that I tried to stress in that article. And I'm happy to send it to you guys so you guys can check it out.
No, please do.
Yeah,
I
I would
want to
like
put
to
it in
read
the
that.
show notes for everybody to read.
We just need to 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 realize that humans have this natural process of development and maturation, and part of that is figuring out how they want to be recognized within the community. And if we just allow kids to do that more than trying to, and I think a lot of people have the best of intentions. They're trying to support their kid. They're trying to make sure they don't feel like they're an oddball. If we as a society relax a little bit, we can make sure that none of them feel like they're oddballs.
I agree with you.
As a whole, we need to just relax a little bit.
Yeah, if I'm going to be born in a movie, let me choose my character, don't tell me. Right? I'm
Yeah.
already screwed. I'm already here. Let me at least write my script or my character. Don't fucking tell me what it is and hand it to me like a fucking flyer. Guess what? You're fucking Janitor Willie for the rest of your fucking life, and I'm going to accept it. No! Fuck that. Let kids write their script, because I guarantee you it's going to be a fuck ton more creative than you. Right? Let them put something together, because if you want to be a space cowboy, I guarantee you that fucker could get there and he'll be the first one riding a rocket with a fucking hat on, swinging it over his head. Because it's possible, because it's all fucking bullshit.
Jay, I don't know if you ever do characters, but I think Janitor Willie should be in your wheelhouse if it isn't.
Yeah.
That should be in your bullpen.
I don't
100%.
know if I just stole from Adam Sandler or not. What was the janitor? The old school video or a CD, and now a severe beating of a high school janitor. Like,
He's not worried about it. He just got the Mark Twain
But it
Award.
is.
He's not paying attention.
I remember those.
Jesus, there's a Mark Twain Award. What is? Do they call it a Sammy?
It's probably something like that.
Yeah, that was good. What a dad joke. I gotta thank you for being here, Hogan. And I would continue this show until like 4 or 5 hours later if I could. But people will tune out after a certain amount of time. So I'd love to extend an invite to have you back. And I also want to give you a moment before we finish to let everybody know where they can find you, what they can expect, anything that you can help them with, your services. And I hope that in listening to this, they understood that your agenda is not one that other people have in how you coach people. Yours is to help them discern versus teaching them methods, is what I've really come to see.
Absolutely. Thanks. And thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun. And I absolutely would love to come back on. Yeah. So my website is youevolving.com. It's YOU-evolving, or as they say, -evolving.com. No one seems to recognize the word hyphen anymore. So I'll throw that in there. And I'm on social media at youevolving, all one word. And the reason I chose that title for my business is specifically because it's, a little play on me being an evolutionary anthropologist, but because my work really is about trying to help people evolve personally. Change. The simplest definition of evolution is change over time. And so I want folks who work with me to be able to change over time, and I want to help give them the tools and the ability to discern or the insights to do that. But it's not about follow these steps and your life is going to be solved. It's about figure out how to view where you're at in your life and how to change things to get to where you want to be. So yeah, people can find me at youevolving.com. There's a real simple contact page there. And they can email me directly. I'm currently taking clients. I've got a couple that I'm working with, a teenager and a middle-aged person. So I deal with folks who are at all stages of life, and really love that work. I also do the political consulting, which also is through that page. So I've got Viking campaigns in honor of my heritage and my fascination with Vikings, and the idea of I like going berserker in campaigns on occasion. So I've got Viking campaigns through that, and then the coaching business.
That's cool. That's super cool. You're a very fascinating dude, and I'm still going to contend that you think we all have thumbs on our feet. Like, we have to next to you, because you have such a diverse understanding of everything that we do that I feel like I can pick up my coffee cup with my fucking foot right now. Thanks.
Let's see. You do.
I'm kidding. I genuinely appreciate you. Gary, you got anything you want to put out before we go? I know you've been working on a lot of things. Anything you want to announce, or are we good this week?
I think we're good. I just own a question. Are you good at poker?
Mm.
Yeah, if I want to play. I'm not much of a gambler. Primarily because, most of your gambling situations, the house is going to end up winning, and I don't like other people getting my money. I always have kids that need a coat or shoes or something, so I can't afford to go and gamble shit away. But I've got my best friend actually is very good at poker, and he has taught me that I'm not as good as I thought I was.
I thought I'd be good too.
That's
Way too
very
emotional.
humble. I like that. That's very humble. I wonder where that comes from, because statistically or on paper, you would be the guy dissecting the backside of people's eyeballs all day long as they sat there and made faces at you.
Oh yeah, no, I can, like I said, I can do it. Yeah, I can do it. But one of the issues I have with when you go to like a poker room is that a lot of them have these relaxed rules where people can wear sunglasses, they can stand up from the table, they can put headphones on. Like, no. I want it old school, because I can't read you if you've got sunglasses and headphones on.
Yeah, if everyone just
then
does
it's
this.
just a matter of
Yeah, it's weird to watch. It's very off-putting.
yeah. Then it's a matter of me just running probabilities with the cards.
Yeah, they all do it now though. Sunglasses, headphones, hood up. It's like a table of the Unabomber.
It's
I
weird.
actually thought about, you've got these poker leagues. I think there should be an old school poker league where none of that's allowed.
Bare naked poker.
There you go.
Bare naked poker.
Yeah.
You come in butt ass naked, sit down, and you have to play straight up. You can't hide shit. And you got to be able to take it and be able to not give off the signs. Better hope she's not good looking in front of you, because you're fucked.
Oh, you're ruined.
You're ruined. I would tell. You better hope it's obvious.
Oh,
sorry.
wow. Okay,
Gary's going to fall asleep.
I think you might have just hit on bonobo poker is what you might have just hit on there.
Bonobo poker. That's what we'll call it. I want to open the bonobo poker room where all disputes are settled.
And when you get mad and lose, you can throw shit at each other.
Yeah, you can throw shit at each other when you lose, and the pot is whatever you want to make it out to be.
Boy, this is really
oh my god,
off the rails.
Well, Chimp Empire just got fucking knocked off the.
I want to watch that. I haven't watched any TV
I do
shows
want to
in a
watch.
long time.
I love nature shows. I have since I was a kid. One of my favorite people on the planet is Jack Hanna. Like watching the old shows where he just visited everywhere. Something about that voice, something about that feel. Like I could just sit there or like Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom or whatever it was back in the day.
Yeah.
I would just sit there enthralled with it. So I'm really jealous that you're up in Oregon, and I have a cousin there, and we're talking about going up there. So if I come there, I'd love to stop by and see, since you have such an understanding of that area out there. And again,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you coming on, man. All right, so remember, everybody, be cool and keep learning.